Good morning. This is Rusty Edwards, the proud principal at Fairview Middle School, and I would like to welcome you to the Black History program at Fairview Middle School. We welcome you and hope that you enjoy this brief presentation.
Hello, my name is Kaylee Wingate and I am a Fairview Falcon alum. After that, I attended Lincoln High School where I was an AP Scholar, and then I attended Wake Forest University where I studied biology, and currently I am a master's student at the University of Kentucky studying forensic toxicology and analytical genetics, specializing in forensic toxicology and chemistry. Today I'm going to talk about the Black family, representation, identity, and diversity. The Black family has been a topic of study in many disciplines: history, literature, the visual arts and film studies, sociology, anthropology, and social policy. Its representation, identity, and diversity has been reverenced, stereotyped, and vilified from the days of slavery to our own time now. The Black family knows no single location, since family reunions and genetic ancestry searches testify to the spread of our family members across states, nations, and continents. Not only are individual Black families diasporic, but Africa and the diaspora itself have been long portrayed as the Black family at large. While the role of the Black family has been described by some as a microcosm of the entire race, its complexity as the foundation of African American life and history can be seen in numerous debates on how to represent its meaning and typicality from a historical perspective. Whether we're free or slaves, as patriarchal or matriarchal, as single-headed or double-headed household, extended or nuclear families, variation appears as well in discussion on the nature and impact of parenting, childhood, marriage, gender norms, sexuality, and incarceration. The family offers a rich tapestry of images for exploring the African American past and present. Thank you.
Drive home your point you're trying to make?
Absolutely. I want the kids and adults to know what these people have said, some of their encouraging words, because you know what they've done, or you'll find out what their accomplishments were, but we also want you to know the context and the things that they said to help them push their agenda forward.
Now, why have you chosen to work with children, and how do you go about recruiting these mini models?
Well, kids are cute, right?
Yes,
Like,
they're adorable.
They're adorable, they're relatable, it makes it consumable, and so children are so innocent, and I wanted to inspire young people and build their self-esteem, and so what better way than to put them in
Look at mini Beyonce.
in their shoes. So yeah, we did casting calls online, parents submit photos, and we basically paired the children up based on their looks and props to make the look perfect.
Now, how did you go about selecting which icons you would actually include in the book?
Yeah, so the first 28 days, I kind of just based it off of the individuals who submitted and people we wanted to highlight. But as we continued the campaign, we realized that it became more of a community and a collaborative effort. So people on Facebook would say, hey, you might want to consider doing this person, or do you know about this individual? And so we did research, and it's basically just a compilation of as a result of people just suggesting people we should feature.
Now, how have the celebrities responded to their little doppelgangers, their little mini-me's?
Well, Janelle Monáe said her picture was adorability.
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 That's a good term.
No,
I like
they've
that.
been very receptive. A lot of them are taken aback by it, but honored at the same time. And so they've retweeted, they've shared, they've posted on Facebook. They've been huge champions of the campaign and just great supporters overall.
And besides current people, why was it important for you to, pair that with the historical figures and the current?
We have to bridge the gap. Mm-hmm. I felt like there was such a disconnect and such a lack of responsibility or ownership. And so I wanted to create a campaign that would show young people the sacrifices that were made and the responsibility that they have to live up to greatness and to honor the legacy of their ancestors. So that's why we chose individuals of the past. But I also think it's important that you know that you don't have to be dead, deceased, or old to be relevant and to do great things. And so that's why we have some of your Diddy's and your Kerry Washingtons in the campaign, because they're currently living and can be looked to as an example.
Amanda Gorman, born 1998, is an American poet and activist. Her work focuses on issues of oppression, feminism, race, and marginalization, as well as the African diaspora. Gorman was the first person to be named National Youth Poet Laureate. She published the poetry book The One for Whom Food Is Not Enough in 2015. In 2021, she delivered her poem The Hill We Climb at the inauguration of U.S. President Joe Biden. Her inauguration poem generated international acclaim, stimulated her 2 books to reach bestseller status, and earned her a professional management contract.
Hi, I'm here to introduce you to Beyond Skirt. She is the first African-American woman to play professional soccer. She is a legendary goalkeeper, a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, and a World Cup champion. Because of her, girls like me who want to play soccer can.
Hi, I am Billy Blanks. I was an African-American sports star, actor, media identity, and inventor of the phenomenal, popular Tylo fitness system derived from my instinctive martial arts training. I was born in Erie, Pennsylvania in 1955 amongst humble backgrounds and grew up as one of 15 children battling dyslexia and tendon problems. However, that did not stop me from starting my martial arts training at age 14 and eventually achieving black belts in Taekwondo and several other arts and winning numerous U.S. martial arts tournaments. In the late 1990s, my innovative and exciting Taekwondo workout routine swept the world like wildfire and propelled me into the position of one of the world's most recognizable and biggest selling fitness trainers.
Hello, my name is Mr. White, and I will be introducing our speaker for today, Dr. David Jackson Jr., the son of the late Reverend Dr. Jackson Sr. and the late Mrs. Vera Jackson Mathis from Atlanta, Georgia. An honors graduate from Booker T. Washington High School in the Atlanta public school system, he received a Bachelor of Science degree in History Education, magna cum laude, and a Master of Applied Social Sciences degree in Public Administration, both from Florida A&M University, FAMU. After graduating from FAMU, Dr. Jackson worked at International Paper Company as a financial analyst for 3 years, after which he taught at Watkins Overton High School in the Memphis City school system for 3 years. He was honored as most influential teacher for the last 2 of those 3 years. He earned a Doctor of Philosophy degree in history at the University of Memphis in Memphis, Tennessee in 1997, when he was only 28 years old, and began his professional career as an assistant professor of history at FAMU that same year. His areas of expertise are ancient Africa, with an emphasis on Egypt, Latin America with an emphasis on Brazil, and African American history since 1865. Jackson was promoted to the rank of associate professor in 3 years and full professor in only 7 years at FAMU. Jackson served as professor of history and chairman of the Department of History, Political Science, Public Administration, Geography, and African American Studies at FAMU for 10 years. Since 2015, he has served as Associate Provost for Graduate Education and Dean of the School of Graduate Studies, Research and Continuing Education at FAMU. Recognized as one of Florida A&M University's most published professors, Dr. Jackson has published over 4 dozen scholarly articles, book chapters, short essays, and book reviews, and has presented over 100 scholarly papers, speeches at professional conferences, universities, public schools, prisons, courts, churches, and other venues throughout the United States. He is the author and editor of 5 scholarly books, including A Chief Lieutenant at the Tuskegee Machine, Charles Banks of Mississippi, Retrieving the American Past, and Go Sound the Trumpet, Selections in Florida's African American History. His latest book, titled Booker T. Washington and the Struggle Against White Supremacy, The Southern Educational Tours, 1908 through 1912, and he was featured on C-SPAN Book Notes to discuss his work in March 2014. Dr. Jackson was a percussionist in FAMU's Marching 100 in the Symphonic Band and is a member of several social service fraternities, including Kappa Kappa Psi, National Band Fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and Sigma Pi Phi Fraternity. He is also 32nd degree Mason and a Shriner. Likewise, he is a member of numerous honor societies and fraternities. Dr. Jackson is married to Dr. Sheila Jackson, and they have 2 children, David Jackson III, and a graduate of the School of Business Administration, major at FAMU, and Deja Jackson, a sophomore biology pre-med major, also at FAMU. I now present to you Dr. David Jackson, Jr.
Greetings. I am Dr. David H. Jackson, Jr., and I'm pleased to be able to share some thoughts with you during this Black History Month of 2021. The theme of Black History Month this year is the Black family, representation, identity, and diversity. You may be asking yourself, why is there a need to talk about the Black family in 2021? And I will say to you that the Black family has been and continues to be one of the core institutions that has sustained African Americans during very tumultuous times, just like the Black church and Black schools. It is also important to speak on this theme in an age when African Americans across the country and others in the human family have to proclaim, like previous generations before them, that Black families matter, just like Black lives matter, because Black lives, ladies and gentlemen, make up the Black families, the theme of this Black History Month. The Black family has been a topic of study in many disciplines: history, literature, the visual arts and film studies, sociology, anthropology, and psychology. Its representation, identity, and diversity have been reverenced, stereotyped, and vilified from the days of slavery to our own time. The Black family knows no single location, since family reunions and genetic ancestry searches testify to the fact of the spread of family members across states, nations, and continents. Not only are individual Black families diasporic, but Africa and the diaspora itself have been long portrayed as the Black family at large. While the role of the Black family has been described by some as a microcosm of the entire race, its complexity as the foundation of African American life and history can be seen in numerous debates over how to represent its meanings from a historical perspective, as slave or free, as patriarchal or matriarchal, as single-headed or dual-headed households, as extended or nuclear, as legal or common law, and as Black or interracial, etc. Variation appears as well in discussions on the nature and impact of parenting, childhood, marriage, gender norms, sexuality, and incarceration. Thus, the family offers a rich tapestry of images for exploring the African American past and present. Therefore, in the few minutes that I have, I plan to speak to you about the Black family in history, beginning with the time before Africans were enslaved in West Africa. In other words, when African people were still free among themselves on the continent of Africa. After which I will talk about the Black family in slavery, the Black family after slavery through the Jim Crow era, the Black family during the Civil Rights era, and the Black family today and all of its representations, all in about 13 minutes. So I ask that you please give me your undivided attention. The late Professor Dr. Ivan Van Sertima taught that the true history of African people is trapped behind a 500-year curtain called slavery. Indeed, we must open the curtain and look back in time to understand the Black family. In Africa, the Black family was the basis of social organization. The foundation of even economic and political life in Africa was the family. Although the eldest male was usually the head of the family, there was a widespread practice of tracing relationships through the mother instead of the father. In other words, early on, women played a significant role in the African family. When examining the social systems in Africa before slavery and the slave trade occurred, certain concepts that are common to us today would be totally foreign to them because of the ways in which their families were structured. For example, there was no word for orphanage in these ancient African cultures because people always had families or extended families to keep children, whether they were their biological children or not. There was no concept of nursing homes or old folks' homes in these ancient African cultures because no one had put their parents or grandparents away when they got too old to take care of themselves. Families were not broken apart because of incarceration, because there was not even a word for jail in these cultures because nobody had ever been to one. The immediate impact of African people being uprooted and stolen from Africa and brought to America for their enslavement was devastating to the Black family. First and foremost, Black families were separated from each other. Imagine someone coming into your home and separating you from your siblings, from your mother and your father, and you never seeing those people ever again. What would that do to your psyche? How would that impact your future? Separating children from their parents was one of the cruelest aspects of slavery. And it is just as cruel and inhumane today when children are separated from their families, even if we are talking about on the US-Mexico border. Forces were at work to separate Black families during slavery for economic reasons and over fears about white people's security on plantations. Therefore, to justify this practice of separating families, it was argued that family ties among enslaved Africans in the Americas were either extremely loose or non-existent, and that enslaved Africans really didn't mind being separated from their family members. However, research has shown that clearly that was not the case. In fact, African people responded to the peculiar institution of slavery by restructuring their social institutions, including their families in America, sometimes based on their African heritage, but ultimately leading them to establish distinctly African-American relationships that often preserved their families in the most desperate of circumstances. In the closing months of the Civil War and afterward, there were thousands of displaced persons. However, one of the most interesting things to see among the ex-slaves was their efforts to search for their long-lost husbands, their long-lost wives, or their long-lost children, who years earlier had been separated by sale or other transactions. In fact, nothing better illustrated the remarkable resiliency of the Black family than their efforts to reunite and, in many instances, to take steps to make their marriages and children legitimate after years and decades of living together enslaved with no ability to marry. This is why some Africans develop their own marriage ritual by jumping the broom, for example. During Reconstruction, post-Reconstruction, and the Jim Crow era, Black families were strained by barriers that were called separate but equal, but were in fact always separate and always unequal. The families adapted to rules under the guise of what was called racial etiquette. For example, there's documentation of Black families having very nice homes, but they were not allowed to paint those homes because it would make them look uppity to whites in the community who did not have such homes themselves. In Rosewood, Florida, the all-Black town that was attacked by an angry white mob in 1923 and burned to the ground, the Carrier family offended local whites. Why? Simply because they had a piano in their two-story home. Black families were also shut out of the mainstream economy during this time, so they had to build their own, often relying on nobody else but family. Even during the Civil Rights era, the Black family remained the core institution in the Black community, but it had to function under duress. The fear of losing loved ones like Medgar Evers and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and boys like 14-year-old Emmett Lewis Till, killed in Mississippi, and 14-year-old girls like Addie Mae Collins and Carol Robertson and Cynthia Wesley, and 11-year-old Denise McNair, who were all killed on Sunday morning on September 15, 1963, in a church bombing at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. These are just a few examples of the children who were killed unjustly and taken away from their families without any systems of accountability at their disposal through the American judicial system. This is why I maintain that the Black family has been under duress since we arrived in the Americas. But believe it or not, regardless of all of these circumstances, by 1960, the majority of Black children were still raised in two-parent households. More than a century after slavery ended, Black people continued to celebrate their bonds by holding family reunions, family holiday gatherings, weddings, receptions, community events, and for some, they even held celebrations honoring deceased family members on their birthdays. Either way, the Black family remains central to Black life and culture, even in the 21st century. So where are we today? The Black family remains the core institution in the Black community. Some of these families are headed by two parents, some by one parent, some by grandma, and some by grandpa. But in whatever form they exist, they are still central to Black life and culture. However, even in 2021, the Black family remains under duress. Unfortunately, time does not permit me to discuss all of the reasons for this morning, but some of them still sound familiar. The massive incarceration of Black men and women has left many children without parents, and they are left to be raised by their grandparents, for example, who are tired and want to enjoy their golden years without the responsibility of having to raise another generation of children. The massive incarceration of Black men and women has taken away aunts and uncles and other extended family members. Also, the drug epidemic in this country, ranging from crack cocaine to methamphetamines, has left many children without functional parents, leaving some to have to raise themselves with little to no supervision at all. In addition, the senseless loss of life at the hands of rogue police officers and racist citizens has left even more families without loved ones, like George Floyd, like Botham Jean, like Daniel Prude, like Breonna Taylor, like Ahmaud Arbery. These families are left without fathers. They are left without sons, left without daughters. They are left without brothers and sisters. They are left without aunts and uncles. And add to that the COVID-19 pandemic and the tremendous amount of sickness and death that has followed, in particular in Black and brown communities. And you will see what a strained Black family unit looks like today. However, through all of the many dangers, toils, and snares that we have already overcome, the Black family unit remains resilient. It has been and continues to be adaptable over centuries of oppression. So cherish the time that you have with your family, young people. Remember the late Fannie Lou Hamer, who would say that you should never forget where you come from and always praise the bridges that help to carry you over. She's saying that you should never forget your mother and your father, your grandmother and your grandfather, your sisters and your brothers, your uncles and your aunts, your teachers and your principals, your elders, and all of those people who have sacrificed in some way so that you can have more opportunities than they had. We must work to build our families because, as you have seen and heard, the family has been the core institution that has helped to sustain us and helped to get us through. This legacy is a legacy and history that all of you should remember. So what is history? The late master teacher, Dr. John Henrik Clarke, taught me that history is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is a compass that people use to locate themselves on the map of human geography. History tells a people where they have been and what they have been, where they are and what they are. But most important, history tells a people where they still must go and what they still must be. So as I close, I implore you to love your family, love your neighbors, and most important, love yourselves. Enjoy Black History Month, and it's been my pleasure to speak with you. I'm Dr. David H. Jackson, Jr., Florida A&M University, signing off. Peace.
Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping in bed. No more backwards thinking, time for thinking ahead. The world has changed so very much from what it used to be. There's so much hatred, war and poverty. Oh yeah. Wake up all the teachers, time to teach a new way. Maybe then they'll listen to what you have to say. They're the ones who's coming up, the world is in their hands. When you teach the children, teach them the very best you can. The world won't get no better if we just let it be. The world won't get no better. We gotta change it, yeah, just you and me. Wake up all the doctors, make the poor people well. They're the ones who suffer and catch all the hell. They don't have so very long before the judgment day. Won't you make them happy before they pass away? Whoa, whoa. Wake up all the builders, time to build a new land. I know we can do it if we all lend a hand. The only thing we have to do is put it in our minds. Surely things will work out. They do it every time. Oh, won't get no better if we just let it be. Oh, won't get no better. We gotta change it, yeah, just you and me. Yeah, yeah. Change that. Yeah, yeah. A two, a 1, 2, 3, people keep on learning. Soldiers, yeah, keep on warring. World, keep on turning. But the bomb is gone. Power, keep on dying. While people keep on dying. World, keep on turning. But the bomb is gone. Oh no. So kind of glad that we tried again. Last time I heard the woman say, so glad I know more than I do then. teachers keep on teaching, preachers, yeah, keep on preaching, workers keep on turning, keep on love, lovers keep on loving, believers, yeah, keep on believing, but sleepers just stop sleeping. It's all in love. Oh no. So I'm tired of the tide of fear. Last time on earth I knew the hope and fear. So glad I know the tide of fear. Just keep on trying.